Our first in our Human Resources section, 2.1, Human Resource Planning, sometimes referred to as workforce planning. Now, this is a management process of anticipating an organisation's current and future staffing needs. Current and future staffing needs. It includes the number of employees required and the type of worker sought. Are we talking about graduates or ICT literate workers, manual labourers? And anticipating the human resource needs of a firm can be carried out by looking at several things. Firstly, the human resource managers can be looking at historical data and trends. So data on trends such as the rate of change in the size of the workforce over the past few years, or the shift to part-time and flexible working hours can assist management in their planning. Sales and income levels. The more a firm is selling, presumably the more it is producing, the more staff it's going to need. If there's an increase in anticipated demand, then the human resource management people are going to get in there, identify that, and start the recruitment process to bump up the level of workers. If income levels in the economy or in a specific market segment are forecasted to grow, this will lead to an increase in demand and presumably an increase in the amount of labour that the firm is going to require. Thirdly, we have labour turnover rates. This measures the number of employees who leave a firm as a percentage of its workforce per year. Take the number of workers leaving, divide it out by the total number of staff, you have got your labour turnover rates. 100 staff at the business, we've got 23 staff leaving during that year. We've got a labour turnover rate of 23%. Fourthly, demographic changes. Now, the government produces data regarding changes in the demographics of the workforce, such as changes in the number of female workers in the economy or the number of graduates, and this can help managers to forecast their human resource needs. Technological changes. Advances in technology such as e-commerce can bring both opportunities and threats. There are employment opportunities for people to work from home, for example, and conversely, firms that are capital intensive may not require as many workers in the future. Human resource managers anticipate this. They'll be looking at which staff to make redundant and specific skills that they're going to need in the future in their staffing. Supply of human resources and demographic changes. On the video now, a few scenarios are going to come up. I want you to think about how the following demographic changes that these scenarios identify could affect the human resourcing of a business. Firstly, in the States, businesses at the moment are having huge headaches trying to get skilled workers into their businesses. They're not able to find enough skilled graduates coming out of America's universities and technical colleges to meet the human resourcing demands of their businesses. Now, most countries will have a skilled migrant category where it's quite easy. You can't meet the demand for skilled staffing with your own citizens, then it's usually quite easy to get people that can meet those skill requirements from overseas. New Zealand is unfortunately famous for training up people and then sending them overseas. So 25% of our most highly skilled people leave the country. Most of them go to Australia, but we can see that they're leaving to all over the OECD. 1/4 of New Zealand born people with tertiary educations now live overseas. Now, obviously, all things being equal, this is going to make it more difficult for New Zealand firms to get those skilled workers that they require. The Japanese population is aging. As the workforce ages, the workforce shrinks. So shrinking workforce, it becomes more and more difficult for Japanese firms to meet their staffing needs. There are just fewer people to select from. Here's an interesting one. Unemployment. We all know since the big bust of 2008 that unemployment has been much higher than it normally has in just about every country we look at least every developed country. But unemployment, while causing problems for businesses, the economy has less income to spend, so that hurts their demand for goods and services. But it also frees up a lot of available workers, so businesses can pick and choose from those workers most suited to their workplaces. It also puts downward pressure on wages, so perhaps in times of low unemployment, wage rates tend to rise quite quickly. With recession, wage rates tend to keep quite flat, which is good for businesses. A lot of countries over the last few years have increased the retirement ages. Increased retirement age, increase the pool of available workers. Women. For the longest time now, women as a percentage of those employed have been steadily increasing. In most economies now, the amount of men and women employed are roughly even. And it's quite interesting as well, because not only are women becoming a greater share of the workforce, but they tend to be more highly skilled as well. They get better grades at school than boys, more go to university. Any organisation that can target, attract, recruit these skilled women are going to be doing very, very well. Now, the whole point around these demographic changes, businesses need to be able to identify and understand these changes so that they can make the appropriate response. Net birth rate. Countries with a high net birth rate will, in the long term, have a larger supply of human resources, making it easier to get the staff that you need. The net migration rate. Are more people coming into your country than leaving the country? If the net migration figure is positive, then the supply of human resources will increase. The retirement age, we just briefly touched on that. Back in the bad old days, retirement age was 50. It went to 55, 60, up to 65. A lot of countries have just bumped it up a couple of years. I think Australia's now 67, the UK is 67. The later the retirement age, the bigger the pool of workers for businesses to meet the human resources needs. Flexibility of the workforce. Businesses or countries that have multi-skilled people tend to have more flexible workers. Businesses that employ a large proportion of part-time workers, such as fast food restaurants and supermarkets, are also able to take advantage of workforce flexibility, as the supply of labour can be quickly changed according to the needs of the organisation. Mobility of labour. This refers to the extent in which labour can move to different locations. It's sometimes known as geographic mobility, and their flexibility in changing to different jobs. This is known as occupational mobility. The more mobile that workers are, either geographically or occupationally, the higher the supply of labour tends to be. Okay, there are other factors affecting the supply of labour, factors that need to be considered. A big one is competition. Right, existing and potential workers will consider the overall package of financial and non-financial factors offered by a business in relation to those provided by its competition. How good is Google to work for compared to IBM? A less favourable package being offered to employees may mean less supply of human resources to that firm. Cost of living, another important thing to consider. Cost of living in a particular area. Now, although more people tend to live in cities, a higher cost of housing and other expenses may deter others from locating in these areas. So, reducing the potential supply of labour to a business. A lot of people would not have the money to locate to Manhattan, for example. Transportation is another important one, specifically the cost and availability of transportation. Businesses that manage to locate themselves or have the good fortune to locate themselves in areas with good transportation systems will tend to attract a larger supply of workers. Those living or working in remote areas may need to rely on private transport, which could be both costly in terms of the money that you have to fork out for getting to work each day, but also time. It's a brave person that wants to spend an hour and a half commuting to work in horrendous traffic and then another hour and a half commuting back